Protestant Church originated in the Middle Ages when the efforts to rehabilitate the Roman Catholic Church began with the return to the original biblical principles. While some of the reform movements were received with some difficulty, others were declared as heretical or subversive. The idea of Reformation emerged in the Czech lands during the reign of Charles IV. King Charles was an enlightened and deeply religious ruler who would support anyone who tried to encourage the faith in God and the Church. One of the most famous Czech reformers was Master Jan Hus, who claimed that the visible church and its parts do not always stand for the same thing as the holy Church of the Lamb, the boundaries of which are known only to Christ himself. Jan Hus lived in the age of great moral decline of the Church and was not afraid to express his ideas of Reformation publicly. As one of the most disturbing issues, he considered the sale of indulgences, a kind of confirmation certificate to ensure easier fate of the deceased who had to pass through purgatory for their sins. Jan Hus put this in contrast with God's grace reflected in Jesus Christ. The process of the Czech Reformation was prompted by the death of Jan Hus in Constance in 1415. Almost 100 years earlier, it heralded the onset of the European Reformation process, which was started by another university professor and Augustinian monk, Martin Luther. Luther's identification with the ideas of Czech Reformation was based on Hus's work, The Church. In its beginnings, the Czech Reformation was affected by harsh and lengthy wars. The Hussites wanted to clear the Church of Jesus Christ from all the wealth and opulence. They chose the city of Tábor as their capital. Tábor was established as an exemplary Christian city that would serve as a prototype of the holy city of Jerusalem. The South Bohemian yeoman and self-educated scholar Petr Chelčický was in strong opposition against the religious wars and tried to promote the idea of non-violence and pacifism. An important event of the Reformation process was marked by the establishment of the unity of the Brethren, which rejected the sovereignty of the Roman Catholic Church, while at the same time intending to stand for people without swords. In the 16th century, the ideas of this minority group of believers became an essential stimulus for the Czech Christianity as well as culture. The most important work of this group is the Kralice Bible, translated into Czech from the original languages, not from Latin as had been common until then. The process of Reformation not only popularized the Bible, but also pointed out the importance of preaching the gospel in the mother tongue, of freeing the liturgical space from sumptuousness and church life from opulence. The Protestant tradition left us with two sacral buildings by German Lutherans from the era of the early Czech Baroque before the Battle of White Mountain. The first is the originally Protestant St. Trinity Church in the Lesser Town, which was renamed the Church of the Virgin Mary Victorious, and since 1628 has housed the wax sculpture of the Infant Jesus of Prague, made famous by the Czech Jesuit missionaries in Latin America. The second building is the Church of St. Salvatore, located in the Old Town. Jan Amos Komenský, one of the greatest scholars of his times and the last Archbishop of the Brethren Unity, became its world-known representative. J.A.K. was an acclaimed encyclopedist, educator, and the author of language textbooks. Following the Battle of White Mountain, a forcible recatholicization took place in the Czech lands with a massive exodus of Protestant believers and involuntary embracing of the Catholic faith as a consequence. One of the famous departures was the exodus of the Moravian Brethren of Suchdol nad Odrou from the estate of the Saxon Count Zinzendorf. There, in 1732, in the small town of Herrenhut, or Ochranov, began one of the greatest Protestant missions. Some of the remote areas of Valašsko, Vysočina, or Polaby became secret centers of the Protestant religion. From these, later arose many Protestant congregations after the Edict of Tolerance was issued by Joseph II. The idea of Reformation was thus preserved. After the Edict of Tolerance was issued, the Protestants who were part of the Lutheran or Reformed Church were allowed to establish their congregations, build churches, and even have their own priests. The architecture of Protestant churches is modest, so as to focus the attention on the service. The parish priest, Jan Karafiat, was one of the most significant personalities of the modern Protestantism. He was the author of what is now the legendary book for children called Broučci, or Beetles. The book itself is the parable of people living in obedience to God. Karafiat was behind the start of Protestant tradition in the family of Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk. The architectonic style of Protestant churches developed mainly in the periods of Neo-Gothic, Art Nouveau, Functionalism, and Cubism. Historically, this was the time of an increase in the numbers of believers after all the religious restrictions were abolished. The Cubist prayer room in Pečky is the only religious building in the world with the Cubist interior design. The new Protestant churches are now built for the sake of growth of the current congregations or the founding of new ones.